Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything you know about me, it's that I love nothing more than a good spasmodic orgy of fake moral outrage. The wailing and the gnashing of teeth and the clutching of pearls and the rending of garments, the overwrought displays of performative hysterics and competitive emoting, I just cannot get enough of it. So as you can well imagine, I've been like a pig in slop these past few days, watching the Olympic Games of overreaction that have taken place since Oakland Raiders head coach John Gruden, sorry, I refuse to call them the Las Vegas Raiders, just like I refuse to say the name of the Los Angeles AFC Football Club, was forced to resign from his job because he insulted some people in some private emails over a decade ago. Now, the wailing and the gnashing and the clutching and the crying and the blubbering and the overblown hysterics, we fully expect to see that whole act from our friends on the woke identitarian left whenever they catch a whiff of the sweet aroma of fake racism. But I've really been struck by how shamefully some commentators on the right have acquitted themselves when talking about this. I don't even want to glorify it by calling it an incident, but I guess it's an incident. The prevailing reaction on the right seems to have been along the lines of, well, yeah, sure, obviously the things he said are racist and offensive and unacceptable, but come on, it was private emails from 10 years ago, so the guy shouldn't lose his job over it, right? And when I talk about conservatives making the fatal mistake of framing their arguments according to the preferred paradigms of crazed radical leftists, I think this John Gruden incident furnishes a rather shocking example of that phenomenon, because in all these countless hours of analysis and reaction, nobody seems willing to acknowledge the elephant in the room and to ask the most obvious question. And why else am I here, dear audience, than to ask the questions that every other commentator is too cowardly to ask? And who knows, maybe the Google SWAT team will bust in here and pull me off the air before I finish saying the words, but here it comes. Why is it racist to say a black guy has big lips? Have we, as a society, completely lost all sense of perspective on what racism actually is, that we just concede racist intent whenever a white dude makes fun of a black dude? Is that really where we are now? Because in a sane world where the meanings of words actually matter, there is absolutely nothing racist about saying, that black guy has big lips. The statement contains no qualitative assertion, either overt or implied, that about the relative merits of any racial subgroup. There is nothing in that statement that could be construed by any reasonable person to mean that white people are intrinsically superior to black people. It is just a guy making fun of another guy for having big lips, and who gives a damn? Even in a country where fake racism has supplanted baseball as the national pastime, this is just about as embarrassing as it gets. Now, on ESPN, which used to be a sports network until they switched to the MSNBC model of all racism all the time, Randy Moss, a man in his early 40s who is already retired and can afford to spend more money during a night out at the casino than you and I will ever make in our entire lives, a man who was financially set for life before his 22nd birthday, he actually wept on the air and had a 5-minute-long emotional breakdown because John Gruden made fun of a guy's lips on a private email in 2011. Randy Moss, who if he dropped my yearly salary on the ground, probably wouldn't bother bending over to pick it up, spent an entire studio segment wailing and blubbering about how impossible it is being a black man in America because John Gruden made fun of a guy's lips on a private email in 2011. And the guy whose lips Coach Gruden made fun of, I don't know whether it's pronounced DeMaurice Smith or DeMaurice Smith, which probably makes me racist, but in any event, he's the former head of the NFL Players Association, and it was his performance in that capacity that impelled Coach Gruden to make fun of him in the private emails. And how do you suppose he reacted when some idiot shoved a microphone in his face and acted like this was the biggest news story since Watergate? Did he react the way any reasonable, self-assured, non-clinically insane man would react? By saying, why am I supposed to care about this? That someone made fun of me in an email from 10 years ago and I'm supposed to give a damn why exactly? Nah, of course he didn't do that. Because in the United States of America, in the third decade of the 21st century, when you've got the opportunity to be the victim of a fake racism hoax and to collect all the elevated status and social currency that accompanies it, you hop your ass on that locomotive, you shovel coal into the boiler like your life depends on it, and you ride that motherfucker until the track runs out. So Mr. Smith, who's also richer than you or I will ever be in our wildest dreams, he basically gave the same soliloquy that Randy Moss did, but without all the tears and snot, about how some guy making fun of his lips on a private email from 10 years ago proves beyond all doubt that white America is still shot through with the original sin of racism, and white men just can't tolerate a successful black man. Which seems a bit ironic, coming from a guy who made his fortune representing a union whose membership is 70% black and where the average salary is $2.1 million a year. But damn it, there I go again saying things you're not supposed to say. Get me the hell out of here, Jim Eagle. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, here in beautiful sunny California, where the white-black supremacists outnumber the black-white supremacists by at least 10 to 1. And when you're planning your next visit, be sure to enjoy our gender-neutral toy aisles, but don't mind the homeless junkie who's pooping on your foot. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And we need to talk about the fact that our vice president is Michael Scott. And no, I'm not going to do her full ringside introduction tonight. I only do that on special occasions and by specific request. And besides, the thing has grown so long and unwieldy at this point, that's what she said, that it's liable to take up 20% of the episode if I do it. But on the subject of Vice President Black Masked Grim Reaper Ninja Lady, the California Cackler, the Bimbo of the Border, the Sacramento Side Piece. Alright, I'll stop. Did you see the video she did the other day, which was possibly the most cringe-inducing piece of video she has ever appeared in, and that includes sex tapes? So she's sitting in a room with some child actors who are pretending to be everyday American middle school kids. We weren't ever supposed to know they were child actors, of course, until one of the stage moms jumped on Twitter and started bragging about how her kid won the casting call and got the gig. Whoopsie! Have a nice vacation in Guantanamo, Mom. But as I'm watching the video, which ostensibly is supposed to be about NASA and space exploration, there's this nagging voice in the back of my head that keeps saying, oh my God, this is real life imitating an episode of The Office. And our vice president, the person who is separated from being the leader of the free world by one beat of Joe Cadaver's Bidenous old heart, is literally Michael Scott. Because seriously, the way this video plays out, it's like Michael Scott was leisurely strolling down the street in Scranton one day, and someone grabs him off the sidewalk and says, I need your help. Our speaker didn't show up, but I've got a room full of kids who are expecting a speech about space exploration. Can you help me, please, sir? To which Michael Scott would say, oh, you need an improv performance? Well, say no more, my good man. I just happen to be a skilled practitioner of that art. I go to improv class 3 nights a week, and I am the best performer in the whole group. So I would be happy to bail you out of your vexing predicament. So Michael Scott enters the room. The kids are all waiting excitedly. He takes his seat, and then the realization hits him that, one, he doesn't know the first bloody thing about space or space exploration, and two, he's really bad at interacting with children. Which is just about how this thing went with the vice president the other day. Like she was some random person who got plucked off the street and told to go talk to some kids about space for 10 minutes. And also, I'm not making any accusations here about the vice president's chemical intake, but if she wasn't drunk or high or medicated, it's just not normal for a sober person to act that way. I actually tried to find a transcript of the video because a direct recitation of the text would be funnier than me trying to paraphrase it. But the vice president, who presumably had no shortage of time to prepare for this thing, who was playing to a crowd of actual, literal child actors, she came off sounding like a person who just found out 5 minutes ago that space exists and there are things in it. There are so many things in space, and there's so much we still don't know, and we need to get out there and explore and see the things, because space is big and it's got things in it. So many things in the big, big space, little things and big things, and it's all in space. And we want to go explore and discover all the things that are in space. It was like if Michael Scott and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a bastard love child, and the bastard love child was 7 years old, and the 7-year-old bastard love child had to give a seminar on quantum mechanics with 4 minutes to prepare beforehand after having drunk a pint of whiskey. This is about what it would sound like. And the other remarkable thing about it, which also threw off some unmistakable Michael Scott vibes, was the way that Kamala Harris acts like she's never met a child before and has no idea how to interact with children. These kids were probably in the 11 to 13 age range, so preteens, in other words. Middle schoolers, you might call them. And she's addressing them in a way that one might address a group of 3-year-old toddlers. She's making all these crazy faces and doing these wild gesticulations and hand gestures and speaking very slowly and modulating her pitch in a very cartoonish way. Like these pre-adolescents are just barely developing a grasp of the English language, and she's there to read them a bedtime story. And look, I guess there's nothing wrong with being a childless woman in your 50s. It's something that's fairly commonplace now. It's probably fair to say there are more childless women in their 50s now than there ever have been previously, which is a byproduct of a society in which young women are encouraged, according to the tenets of third-wave feminism, to reject marriage and motherhood in favor of pursuing their professional careers outside the home, and that's fine. It's a free country, supposedly. Women should be free to make such choices if they are so inclined, but up until fairly recently, it wasn't considered healthy or normative for women to be hitting their 40s without having been married or bearing children. And if they did, it was because they had tried and failed at finding a husband. It wasn't all that long ago that childless, unmarried women in their 40s were referred to as spinsters or old maids, or lesbians, as the case may be. But Kamala Harris got married for the first time when she was 2 months removed from her 50th birthday, which seems absolutely bizarre to me, and I can't help it. When I hit my 50th birthday, I will have been married for 31 years. My kids will be 21, 25, and 30. So I find it impossible to identify with people my own age who have never been parents. They evince a shallowness and a self-absorption that I find pretty revolting, frankly. And maybe that's why Kamala Harris comes off as such a fake and a phony, especially when she tries to interact with children, because she clearly doesn't have the faintest idea what she is doing. Which is really more sad than anything else. I feel bad for her. She's missed out on the most rewarding part of life and the most character-building part of life. When there are people who are small and helpless, who depend upon you for their very survival, your obsession with yourself goes by the wayside in a pretty big damn hurry, and it changes you for the better, and it changes you for the better the way that you look at the world and the people in it. And increasingly, more and more, we have childless middle-aged women who sit in positions of political power, who make policies that affect other people's children, despite the fact that they have no personal insight into being parents themselves, and that can be an exceedingly dangerous thing. Which brings us to Loudoun County, Virginia, and the story of Mr. Scott Smith. In April of this year, in the girls' bathroom at Fairfax High School, during school hours, Scott Smith's 14-year-old daughter was allegedly raped several different ways, basically every way that a female can be sexually violated, by a male student who identifies as gender fluid, who wears women's clothing on the days when he feels like going into the girls' restroom and raping somebody. But per the so-called gender-affirming policies instituted by the legendarily woke Loudoun County School Board, this male student was permitted to use whichever restroom and locker room he felt like using on any given day, according to which outfit he happened to be wearing and to the dictates of his so-called gender fluidity. According to the members of the Loudoun County School Board, 3 of whom are childless women in their 40s and 50s, this policy represents social justice at its finest and only a bigoted transphobic monster would object to his or her daughter being forced to share the girl's bathroom with a boy in a dress who was using the boys' restroom yesterday and every other day when he decides to wear trousers and isn't in the mood for raping anybody. The Loudoun County School Board bent over backward to hush up the fact that a 14-year-old girl had been raped, allegedly, during school hours in one of their restrooms as a direct consequence of their quest for wokesterism and virtue, and they lied about it, and they lied about it repeatedly. 2 months after the alleged rape, after Scott Smith was told that the district preferred to handle the matter internally, 2 board members stated on the record during a board meeting that no such assaults had ever occurred in their district, when they knew full well that this was the opposite of the truth. So on 22 June, Scott Smith decided he had had just about enough, and as the father of 2 daughters myself, I feel impelled to say I very much admire this man's restraint, because I wouldn't be capable of it. He attends the board meeting and tries to get answers about the policy that resulted in his daughter allegedly being raped. But was Mr. Smith allowed to speak when he stepped up to the microphone? Nope. Of course he wasn't. He got beat up by the cops, arrested, and hauled off to jail. He was mocked relentlessly by the national news media, called a domestic terrorist and a right-wing extremist, and turned into a poster boy for Attorney General Merrick Garland's fun new initiative to send the FBI after any parents who raised their voices against the ideology of wokesterism and complained that radical race and gender politics have no place in America's public schools. So imagine that. Your daughter gets raped, horrifically raped, during school, in the school that you paid for, where you as a parent should be able to enjoy the reasonable expectation of her safety. And the response of the local school board is to have you publicly beaten, thrown in jail, and derided as a domestic terrorist on CNN and by the Justice Department. Leftists and Democrats have always loved using other people's kids as rhetorical human shields whenever they're trying to ram through their favored legislation and increase their own political power. They never hesitate to accuse their opponents of wanting kids to be endangered and harmed and starved and whatnot. But the reality on the ground bears little resemblance to the words that come out of their lie holes. And it evinces not very much concern for the actual welfare of actual children in the real world. Democrats love open borders because they think open borders make it easier for their party to win elections. But those open border policies result in thousands upon thousands of children being horrifically abused and trafficked as sex slaves. Democrats love lockdowns and mask mandates because it makes them feel powerful, knowing they can force people to do whatever they want them to do. And when the result is an epidemic of teen suicide, they won't even acknowledge that a problem exists. Much less that their policies might be to blame for it, much less that policies which supposedly exist to safeguard public health, but which result in kids taking their own lives, probably ought to be reevaluated. Democrats love to wave their rainbow flags and crow about equity and diversity and inclusion, but when it's your daughter who gets raped as a result of their recklessness, you are the one who gets beat up by their goon squad and thrown in the county jail. So next time you hear Nancy Pelosi or crying Chuck Schumer or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or the evil demonic bastards on the Loudoun County School Board claiming they give 2 squirts of piss about the welfare of your kids or anybody else's kids or about any damn thing but the maintenance of their own power, remind them in no uncertain terms, as loudly as you can, using whatever platform is available to you, that they are horrible people and damnable liars who would be ashamed of themselves if they had a functioning conscience. Thanks for watching. See you Friday. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.